Found it. The Lost Labyrinth of Hawara. Evidence of Atlantis in Egypt.
For 1,000 years, historians traveled to Egypt to see the famous labyrinth of Hawara. They said it was so massive, it made the pyramids look small. It covered 3 million square feet, 70 acres of rooms and corridors stacked on multiple levels. The Egyptian priests allowed visitors on the upper floors, but the chambers below ground were off limits. They claim those rooms belonged to the kings who built the labyrinth.
Okay.
Archaeologists say the labyrinth is a myth, but new technology proves it's still down there. And if the priests were telling the truth, the Egyptians didn't build it, they found it.
Oh, medium rare, a little pink inside.
Oh, you're fine.
Yummy.
Are you bleeding?
What? No, it's barbecue sauce. Real barbecue sauce. The kind that people argue about on X.
Well, why are you covered in it? What are you doing there in the first place?
With barbecue, brisket so tender, it tasted like it had been slow cooked by a choir of angels. I took one bite and started speaking in tongues. Well, more like mumbling, but my mouth was full of pork. But still.
You know, you didn't really need to drive all the way out to the back 40 for barbecue. You could have just used Goldbelly.
Oh, did you just try to pull me?
That's a sponsor, okay.
Well, according to the growling in my stomach, I sure did. Goldbelly is the destination for America's most iconic food, partnering with legendary restaurants, bakeries, and chefs, and shipping their dishes nationwide. From Joe's Stone Crab and the Christmas Pie Cakin' to Martha Stewart's Cakes, Lauderite Macaroons, and Junior's Cheesecake, you can get it all. I placed an order with Russ and Daughters for their Nova Bagels and Babka Spread, the Brooklyn flavor I grew up with, and that first bite instantly brought me back to New York. I also added the Royal Blue and White cookies from William Greenberg Desserts, a holiday twist on their world-famous black and whites. Soft, cake-like, half chocolate and half vanilla. Absolutely delicious. And shipping was excellent. Everything arrived perfectly packed, still cold, and the smoked salmon incredibly fresh.
No, hey, I thought you didn't eat on camera.
I don't.
That's what makes Goldbelly special. It's memorable, unique, and so much more exciting than anything from a grocery store or delivery app. If you're looking for that perfect gift for everyone on your list, or want to impress your friends and family with an unforgettable meal, go to goldbelly.com and get 20% off.
Okay, so that's the thing. The Y-Files is the discount code. All right,
Hawara
let's go.
sits at the edge of the Fayum Oasis, about 50 miles south of Cairo. Today, it looks like a pile of rubble in the shadow of the crumbling Black Pyramid. But 4,000 years ago, this place was alive. And right in the middle of it was a building that made the pyramids look like toys.
I would like to underline, just to assist your imagination in order for it to be more historically accurate, in period, the pyramids, first of all, they were smooth and they were covered into a plaster. So you would not see the little aliasing, anti-aliasing, aliasing. They look aliased and they look like they are steps. No, they would have been very smooth, covered in white plaster, and sometimes with a gold peak. So yeah, the pyramids were white in period.
The labyrinth. Historians wrote about it for 600 years.
Yeah.
Different eras, different languages, different cultures, but they all describe the same thing.
Okay.
Herodotus was there around 450 BC.
Yeah.
The priests who ran the complex acted as his guides. They walked him through the upper structure. He saw thousands of rooms connected by winding passages. He described it as intricate and confusing, a massive structure designed to overwhelm the senses.
So it was an IKEA?
No, it was a sacred administrative and religious center, not a
IKEA.
furniture store.
I don't know, thousands of rooms, no way out, people wandering around crying, throw in some Swedish meatballs, and that's IKEA.
Herodotus said the construction was beyond human ability.
Okay.
I saw it myself, and I found it greater than words can say. For if one should put together all the buildings and great works produced by the Greeks, they would prove to be inferior to this labyrinth.
Wow.
The labyrinth surpasses even the pyramids.
The upper floor alone was massive, and around the maze of rooms were 12 enormous chambers called courts. Each represented one of Egypt's regional governments. And the upper structure was only a small part of the complex. The priest told Herodotus about the underground chambers, but refused to show him. Only priests went below. They said the lower levels held the burial vaults of sacred crocodiles, mummified, wrapped in linen, with bronze teeth and eyes made of jewels.
Yeah, great. Now the lizard people got bling.
There are two kinds of chambers, one below the ground and the other above. 3,000 in number, but the chambers underground we heard about only, for the Egyptians were not willing to show them.
You see, there we go. That's a good image. I think this is from the temple of Seti the First. I wanted to show you one thing. Another thing you should imagine when you look at inner corridors of all sorts of temples and ritual structures in ancient Egypt, is that all the walls would be in color and painted, including the hieroglyphs. And in fact, the colors would have been bright and vivid. There was one of these walls, specifically in the temple of Seti I, that was in fact cut, removed, and sent to Florence. This has been examined. If you read letters of the first Egyptologists that actually went to the place when it was reopened for the first time, they said that the colors were still vivid. This is like a discussion that we have we're talking like 200 years ago. The colors were still bright and vivid, but as they got into contact with oxygen again, they actually darkened, or some darkened and some faded away. So whenever you imagine, once again, these walls in period, you have to imagine them fully bright, fully colored, and including the inscriptions.
Saying that here were the kings who first built this labyrinth, and of the sacred crocodiles.
Thousands of rooms above and below. That distinction matters. Amenemhat III is linked to the labyrinth around 1800 BC, but the priests implied the original builders came earlier, much earlier. 4 centuries after Herodotus, Roman geographer Strabo wrote that the labyrinth was still there and was still in use. Strabo was just as stunned as Herodotus, but one feature stood out.
No stranger can find his way in or out without a guide. But the most marvelous thing is that the roof is made of a single stone, with no wood or other material involved.
Strabo saw a roof made of massive stone slabs. No wood, no beams, just millions of tons of rock floating over their heads.
Of course, this could be a misinterpretation of someone who doesn't understand architectural principles of the building and only sees the final product without seeing how it was assembled.
Over 100 years later, the labyrinth was still there. Historian Diodorus Siculus wrote about it. So did Pliny the Elder. Everyone knows the legend of the Minotaur, Theseus, and the labyrinth.
Of course.
It's the most famous maze in history. Pliny the Elder said the famous Greek labyrinth was just a cheap copy.
There is no doubt that Daedalus adopted it as the model for the labyrinth built by him in Crete, but that he reproduced only 100th part of it.
Herodotus, Strabo, Pliny, Diodorus Siculus, all kinds of historians describe the same thing. Multiple levels, thousands of rooms, an impossible maze, architecture and construction far beyond anything humans are capable of.
Okay, that's the only sentence. I'm not against the idea that there is a labyrinth like this if the sources mention it, and the simple fact that we may have not found it does not automatically mean that they were all insane. Far beyond what humans are capable of is a sentence that is doing a lot of lifting on its own, because the stuff that we have been capable of doing is outstanding even in the Bronze Age. And a civilization now they say a civilization that predates the Egyptians, but that also needs to be proven. It is also possible that the Egyptians made it, but they made it in the early period and we don't know how. At the end of the day, a lot of the pyramids there were a lot of the structures that we see in, for example, the Giza Plateau, they allegedly have been made with copper tools. How? We haven't got a clue. That's what makes it a mystery, but I don't know, beyond what a human is capable of, unless we see it, we can't make that statement. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content. And at the same time, you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much.
And there's another detail every historian agrees on. Nobody is allowed to enter the lower chambers.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And for 2,000 years, nobody did. Eventually, the labyrinth was looted and quarried for stone. Archaeologists said there's nothing left of the Hawara labyrinth but rubble and sand, if it existed at all.
Oh, I use this music.
In 1888, the world's most famous archaeologist arrived at Hawara.
Okay.
Sir William Matthew Flinders Petri was more than an academic. He was an explorer. He lived in rock tombs, he fought off bandits, and invented the methods archaeologists still use. He came to Hawara to find the tomb of Amenemhat III. What he found was a death trap. The pyramid was designed to kill anyone who entered it. Petri spent months digging into the rock, trying to find an entrance, but every tunnel was a dead end. He realized the pyramid wasn't solid stone. It was mud brick held together by loose sand, and it was unstable. As he dug, the tunnel kept collapsing. Sand poured in like water. At one point, he was crawling through a narrow passage. Suddenly, his shoulders jammed against the stone. He tried to move. He was stuck.
Nope. I'm having a panic attack just listening to this.
Yeah.
Petri was pinned in a stone coffin. He had millions of tons of brick, sand, and mud pressing down on him. He tried to call for help, but he couldn't breathe. Then his candle went out.
Oh my gosh, this is nightmare fuel.
But this was Flinders Petri. He didn't panic, he just waited. Eventually, a worker behind him realized something was wrong and tossed a lit match down the tunnel. That brief flash gave Petri the orientation he needed to twist free. But he didn't quit. He lit another candle and went back in.
Oh my
He tried
God.
the north side first, but found nothing. So he took a chance and tunneled south. And after just a few feet, he found an entrance.
Okay.
And not just a hole, he found a door with steps leading down under the pyramid. But now he had a new problem. Hawara sits on a canal just off the Nile. Centuries of irrigation raised the water table. The steps disappeared under salty, filthy water. Petri went in anyway.
I want to say two things, because I like to provide commentary. While I'm not a fan of the AI-created video clips, I have to say that I love the way he presents the information. He's a fantastic storyteller, if you will. And in general, I like the music and the editing. It's a good, solid video. I really enjoy watching the Y files. The one thing I wanted to say is that underwater management, when it comes to any form of digging in classical antiquity, Iron Age and Bronze Age, is highly documented, at least when it comes to Roman, Greek, sometimes even Egyptian sources. And I went a little bit on a sources journey, and as I was reviewing this, it would blow your mind to know how sophisticated both Romans and Greeks were when it comes to vertical mining shaft construction. Because they would go down even up to 200, 240 meters under the ground, which is, I mean, compared to modern mining, we go thousands of meters below the ground, but we have machinery and, you know, it's a completely different environment. But even going down 200 meters, they knew that they had to deal with oxygen problems because the air gets bad, and they had systems of candles to see if the air was still breathable down there before sending men and losing them. They had systems to deal with the water, which is where I'm now connecting with, because they knew that you could run into an underwater river, for instance, and it was going to flood everything and everyone would die. Because do remember that when Roman workers and Greek workers were finding silver underground or gold underground, and they are starting to dig, they are like 150 meters underneath the surface of the earth, and then they start digging horizontally. They would do it in a way that if you are even remotely claustrophobic, it would make your mind explode. Because they would only dig necessary to literally, you couldn't even sit. You had to go in and keep digging, getting the ore while you couldn't even stand. It was very dangerous. They would always lose personnel, by the way, but usually it was fine because they were digging gold or silver. So they could buy new people. Not nice, but that's what it is. Anyways, when they had to deal with water, they used a device. There was a wooden machine that would pump out the water and push it out a system of holes so that they would literally have this machine work round the clock while they were digging the area to make sure that whenever water would come in, it would be pumped out. And what's interesting is that this machine utilized a specific type of screw that was made of bronze that the ancient Greeks used. The Romans adopted it from the Greeks but kept the original Greek name, which is Egyptian screw. And this screw was called the Egyptian screw because the Greeks learnt it from the Egyptians. And I thought it was interesting to bring up as a little commentary, because look how we're discussing now, well, yeah, but there is water levels. Yeah, but the Egyptians knew how to deal with those so well that the Greeks copied them. And that's my TED Talk.
He crawled through the slime, darkness, and swarms of rats.
Yes.
When he finally broke into the inner passages, the water was chest deep. He found sliding trap doors and false passages. He found massive stones hanging from the ceiling, rigged to drop on intruders.
Hey, don't get me copy claimed.
Please don't. You're ruining the tension. Petri disarmed the traps one by one. When he finally reached the central chamber, it was carved from a single block of yellow quartzite. The roof was made of 3 slabs of white quartzite, each weighing 45 tons. It was an architectural masterpiece, and it was empty. Tomb robbers got there first. Feeling defeated, Petri studied the field of rubble next to the pyramid. He found the remains of an enormous building that covered 70 acres. Petri realized what he discovered. The location matched ancient maps. The dimensions matched ancient descriptions. He was standing on the foundation of the lost labyrinth of Hawara. He was sure of it. But there was not much there, so Petri packed up and went back to England. It was a tremendous discovery, but he was disappointed that the labyrinth was gone. But Petri forgot one thing. The labyrinth went down multiple levels. He thought he discovered the foundation. It was actually the roof. The labyrinth wasn't destroyed. It was right under his feet.
Okay.
And it's still there.
If this were to check out, imagine the stuff that would be found in there. You know what could be found? Of course, any noble metal, like gold, can last for thousands of years, which is one of the reasons why it's so precious. We could find honey. It's still edible. Honey can also last for thousands of years and you could still eat it. It's insane. It just doesn't spoil under the correct, possibly anaerobic conditions. But in general, honey's crazy how resistant it is.
Louis de Cordier wasn't an archaeologist. He was a Belgian artist and philosopher who spent years studying ancient architecture. He was convinced Petri missed something.
Okay.
It took 2 years,
What did he miss?
but de Cordier managed to get a permit to survey the Hawara site. He partnered with Egypt's National Research Institute of Astronomy and Geophysics, and he brought the most advanced ground-penetrating radar available. De Cordier's team started scanning in early 2008. The equipment could see through 50 feet of sand and sediment, and what they found confirmed 2,500 years of history.
Okay.
They found a massive grid of walls 40 feet down. The walls were several feet thick, and they were granite, not brick. The
Granite.
structure covered about 750,000 square feet. That's the size of 10 football fields. They published the results. The press picked up the story. This was one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in history. Then nothing. Zahi Hawass was Egypt's Secretary General of the...
It's always him, guys. It's in his book. It's always Zahi Hawass. Like, I swear, while I tend to be a little skeptical on things, I'm not skeptical then. If Zahi Hawass is involved in this, 100% he blocked something. I can't stand that guy. That guy is filth. I'm just going to say it.
Supreme Council of Antiquities.
Secretary General at a Supreme Council? Oh, the ego of this guy.
He was the most powerful archaeologist in the country, and he controlled all the permits. He imposed a communication ban on the discovery. He said it was a matter of national security.
National security? On a 5,000-year-old building? This guy's got some stones.
Right? De Cordier waited. 2 years passed. The official release never came. The team couldn't discuss their findings. They couldn't publish follow-up research. They couldn't return to the site, not unless Hawass allowed it. By June 2010, de Cordier had waited long enough. He published the data himself. Scans, reports, analysis, everything the Egyptian government refused to release.
Okay.
They blacklisted him. De Cordier now lives in the mountains of southern Spain. He went from presenting at European universities to farming almonds. De Cordier lost everything just for sharing data he collected legally with the help of the Egyptian government.
That's insane.
But Zahi Hawass wanted to make an example of him. He wanted to make sure no one else tried to expose their secrets. But de Cordier wasn't the only one.
What would be the incentive? Because you would imagine that if there is something that big of a discovery, why wouldn't Zahi Hawass do it himself, take all the credit, which is probably what he would do, go in there with his team of scientists while they talk about how magic is real, and a chicken, was it a turkey or a chicken, a beheaded turkey that could actually walk around, and then they would reattach the head because magic... Literally, that's what Zahi Hawass said at Joe Rogan Experience. Why wouldn't he do it, though?
If you find something in Egypt that challenges the official timeline, you don't get a Nobel Prize. You get banned.
Yeah.
In 1993, German engineer Rudolf Gatenbrink sent a robot up a narrow shaft in the Great Pyramid. He found something nobody expected, a limestone door with copper handles.
Okay.
He made the mistake of telling the world.
See, it makes sense that it's copper, considering, given the time, Chalcolithic.
Hawass immediately banned him.
Yeah.
Then Hawass took the robot and the credit.
And he was the one, Zahi supposedly discovered it, but he's discovered everything.
I discovered. Now,
This guy.
about what I discovered in the stone that I discovered. I want to show the whole world what I discovered, and I discovered major important things.
Are they online?
No, in my book, Giza
My
and
book?
the Pyramids. In my book, Giza and the Pyramid.
The pyramids.
It happened again in April 2008. The same month de Cordier was scanning at Hawara, researcher Andrew Collins was at Giza. He followed old notes to the Tomb of the Birds. Collins found a crack in the rock leading to a massive chamber. He and his team made it several hundred yards into a system heading toward the second pyramid. They found carved rooms and passageways. Collins reported it.
Hawass would probably describe this as New Age.
Big mistake. Hawass said the caves didn't exist. Collins was banned from the site. A few months later, Hawass was filmed entering the same caves.
Okay.
Rules for thee, but not for Zahi. You see what I did there?
Yeah, I'll take Hecklefish over Zahi Hawass. Here, I said it.
Hawass called exploring the caves an incredible experience, but nobody else would have that experience. In 2010, a metal gate was installed over the entrance. No further exploration is allowed.
You cannot just go in directly like this. You have to make a study. You have to research it. You have to decide as a scientist, when can you do it? And when we can use it,
been 9 years.
We do that, we can...
Yeah, 9 years,
come on,
brother.
I mean, we sent
9
rockets.
years.
We sent rockets
you are
wrong.
Hang on,
you are
don't
wrong.
Why give you permission to drink of nonsense? What you believe, it's nonsense.
Oh yeah, I do remember this one. I do remember this. I watched and reacted to this entire incident between Hancock and Zahi Hawass when they had that clash. This is from like 10 years ago, I believe, 10 or 12 years ago. And I watched the whole thing, I scrutinized it. The reason why he exploded is because Hancock mentioned the name Bovell, Philip Bovell, who, and if you're not aware, it would be the archaeologist, the guy who proposed the idea of the pyramids being 10,000 years old, and therefore thereby creating the Orion theory. Basically the guy who said the pyramids, if understood by the way the sky was 10,000 years ago, then they would be mapping with extreme precision to the Orion belt. I am not ready to redetermine completely and then just date the, was it 14,000 years ago? In fact, it's probably 14,000 years. Like, you need more than that. But the fact that you can't even mention the name in this, and Zahi Hawass goes into complete madness, tells me that this guy is a control freak. And that kind of attitude blocks science.
It's the big Greek and closed. It is the big closed. It's closed in Chicago by Walter Spirner by Echo. Exactly.
I don't want to hear.
I want you to understand. This conspiracy theory that you do have is wrong completely. We do not hide anything.
What
we have the scan pyramid team.
Right.
They're working.
But you understand this is different technology.
I understand, but they know about this technology.
But have they used this technology?
No, they said this technology.
When talking about technology, for context, they are talking about the synthetic aperture radar technology that was presented by the team of Armando May, Corrado Malanga, and Filippo Biondi when they were discussing about the possibility of having mega structure and, in fact, an entire city under the pyramids. I don't believe a word that comes from Armando May or Corrado Malanga. I'm open-minded when it comes to Filippo Biondi up to a certain extent. But still, I would take any of them over Zahi Hawass. Because while a lot of people that present alternative archaeology, yes, sometimes they're wrong. Maybe it's wishful thinking. But at least they talk from a position of desire for exploration and discovery. But Zahi Hawass lies. Those are direct lies. And I'll take someone who may be wrong, or perhaps methodologically not precise, over someone who knows more and specifically lies to control.
It cannot work.
Discovery, suppression, silence. The same pattern.
Right.
And the same man behind it all, Zahi Hawass. The labyrinth exists. It's considered the greatest structure of the ancient world. It's right there, 40 feet underground. But no one is allowed to dig. On July 21st, 2015, a private meeting took place in the Crown Hotel in Harrogate, England.
Okay.
Tim Akers was a former RAF officer and satellite expert. He spent his career tracking submarines and underground bunkers. He had something to show a small group of researchers. He used synthetic aperture radar, the same technology that finds hidden nuclear sites.
Yeah.
Akers pointed it at Hawara. The scan showed 4 levels beneath the roof, not 1. They were separated by up to 100 feet of solid rock.
I would need him to explain to me how we went that deep with that specific type of tech. I'm not saying it's false. I'm just saying I don't understand how that happened, though.
A central corridor connected all 4 levels. It was a vertical shaft running the full depth of the complex, extending 150 feet underground. An omega-shaped moat surrounded the entire structure. The shape matched the Egyptian Shen ring, the symbol of eternity. Then Akers showed them the central hall. The bottom level stretched 300 feet long and 120 feet wide. Every level converged on this space. And at the center of the hall was a freestanding object. It measured about 130 feet long. But here's where the story gets crazy.
Okay, let's go.
The radar return signal changed. It wasn't reflecting off stone. It wasn't wood or mud brick. The signature was metallic. A solid metal object the size of the Statue of Liberty buried 100 feet underground, shaped like an upright disc or a ring.
Man, yeah, of course you're gonna think Stargate. I get it, but man, can you imagine?
Akers said the material signature wasn't like anything he'd seen in his entire career, but it was there, and he didn't think it was a tomb. The shape suggested something functional, a ring that size made of metal buried at the exact center of a 4-level complex. It wasn't decorative. It was built to do something. Some on his team thought it was a portal. Others thought it could be a power generator. The only thing they agreed on, it wasn't a coffin.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it not being a coffin, and the reason why he's saying that is because oftentimes between archaeology and alternative archaeology, they always talk about, oh, this is a coffin, and then the alternative side says it's not a coffin, clearly not a coffin. So, like, this is one of the areas of discussion, you could say, debate.
Akers and his team kept the findings secret for a decade. They learned from Decordier, if you go public, you get blacklisted.
Of course.
They wanted to excavate.
Makes sense.
They needed permits. After 10 years of quiet negotiations, they finally released the data in 2025. Still no permit. It's a 4-level underground complex with a 130-foot metallic object at the center. It's associated with Pharaoh Amenemhat III around 1800 BC. But the Egyptian priests said the labyrinth wasn't built by the pharaoh as a burial tomb. It was built by a much older civilization as a library. Those ancient people needed a place to store their knowledge before they were wiped out in a great flood.
You mean
So basically it is about the Younger Dryas, also because, I mean, it does have Graham, I don't know how to pronounce it, Hancock book in here, so at least
The
we know the
priests
connection.
were talking about Atlantis. When Plato wrote about Atlantis around 360 BC, he was specific. He named his source. He said Egyptian priests told the story to the Greek statesman Solon 2 centuries earlier. The priests had records, they had dates. Plato said Atlantis fell around 9600 BC. Geologists say the Ice Age ended around 9700 BC. Robert Schoch dates the Sphinx to 9700 BC. 3 different sources, 1 specific date. For most of history, that date meant nothing. No civilization existed that early. Then we started finding things. Around 9700 BC, the Younger Dryas period ended. Global temperature spiked and the ice sheets collapsed. Sea levels rose over 400 feet. Coastlines around the world flooded. Entire land masses vanished beneath the waves.
how dare you?
Every major ancient culture has flood myths dating to this exact
True.
period. Different cultures, different continents with no contact,
True.
but they tell the same story.
Oh yeah, the flood happened. I'm
The Egyptians
convinced.
had their own version. They called
Yeah.
the pre-flood era Zep Tepi, or the first time. The pyramid texts talk about it repeatedly. These are the oldest religious writings in the world. The Turin King list has dates
that we have.
and durations, divine rulers that reigned for thousands of years before human pharaohs. This wasn't vague mythology, these were administrative records.
Yeah.
Mainstream Egyptology calls this symbolic. They say the gods
Yeah.
represent concepts, not beings.
Mainstream archaeology should not talk about the gods. It's a different subject. You can talk about it as mythology if you want. In fact, science cannot say whether gods exist or not because it's outside of its sphere. Anything metaphysical should not require physical proof because it's like asking, you need to prove the existence of music by using a camera. Take a picture. I don't see the music, it doesn't exist. You're not using the correct medium to do that. And of course, I respect if some of you are atheists, I understand that, but I'm just saying sometimes I think it's wrong to ask scientists to provide proof of the existence of God, and the other way around is also wrong.
Then there's the Temple of Horus at Edfu.
Yeah.
The Edfu building texts span over 300 feet of wall space. They describe the temple's construction on foundations from an earlier structure that existed before the flood. They reference beings called the Shebtu. These were followers of Horus who arrived after a great cataclysm destroyed their homeland. They also mention 7 sages who came with them from an island swallowed by the sea. These aren't scribbles on a papyrus. These are carved into the temple walls. And these texts describe what these beings did. They established sacred mounds throughout Egypt. They laid foundations for temples at precise locations. They brought knowledge of astronomy, architecture, mathematics, and medicine. They taught the people who would become the first Egyptians. Now, this doesn't read like mythology. This reads like history.
Could read us both, to be fair.
The Edfu texts describe a lost civilization that brought knowledge to Egypt. Mainstream historians call it a nice story. They say there's no physical evidence that this first time ever existed. They're wrong. The evidence is carved into the bedrock itself. In 1991, geologist Robert Schoch took a close look at the Great Sphinx. The walls showed vertical fissures. These are erosion patterns caused by prolonged rainfall, not wind, not sand, water falling from the sky over extended periods. Egypt's last significant rainfall ended around 5000 BC. Schoch estimated the minimum construction date for the Sphinx was between 7000 and 5000 BC, but he later pushed that estimate to 9700 BC, based on additional geological analysis. This was directly after the cataclysm and directly after the floods receded. The same weathering appears on the Assyrian at Abydos. Massive red granite blocks are cut with precision modern engineers struggle to replicate. And there's water. Constant water fills the lower chambers.
Yeah, the precision thing is real. And also, it's interesting, the water situation. I did see a whole discussion about these tunnels that run at a weird angle under the pyramids. And some do think that it's a possibility that it was a way to deal with excess water.
And it cannot be pumped out. The site was designed for water. Edouard Naville excavated the Assyrian in 1914. He was a mainstream Egyptologist, not a fringe theorist. He said he wouldn't be surprised if this was the most ancient architectural structure in Egypt. He was ignored. Strabo explicitly stated both the Assyrian and the labyrinth shared the same builder. He called the king Ismandis. Same builder, same era, same construction techniques. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey proves advanced construction existed in 9600 BC. Massive stone circle.
Well, I don't know about 9600 BC, but Göbekli Tepe is a mind F word.
Carved pillars weighing tons. Astronomical alignments precise to fractions of degrees. It was built by people who supposedly hadn't invented agriculture yet. Then it was intentionally buried around 8000 BC. It was as if someone wanted to preserve it and keep it hidden. Someone was here long before the ancient Egyptians, and whoever they were, they helped jumpstart Egyptian civilization. Hieroglyphics appeared suddenly around 3500 BC. They were complete and perfect. There was no developmental period, no primitive early versions. Math, medicine, astronomy,
So yeah, on the hieroglyphics thing, we had a similar situation with ancient script that predates the Greek script. At first we didn't have the older version, but then the older version was excavated. So once again, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. That's the expression. So we haven't found. So it doesn't mean that there wasn't a linear development of the script. But maybe it was lost because, of course, it's going to go further back. And then we only find evidence for the script when it's complete, but we don't have the developmental stages. It doesn't automatically come to reason then that this was like, oh, they were told, here is the full script by someone else. It's not impossible, but it doesn't necessarily follow.
Architecture all appeared fully formed. It was as someone handed the Egyptians a complete operating manual. And that operating manual is still here. Every bit of ancient knowledge is in the labyrinth. We can read it right now today. All we have to do is dig. If an advanced civilization knew it was about to be destroyed, they would do exactly what we would do. They would preserve what mattered. They would store knowledge somewhere it could survive. They would build a vault. Every civilization builds archives, from the Library of Alexandria to the Vatican archives. In the 1930s, Edgar Cayce described another archive. Cayce was a transmedium. He delivered over 14,000 documented readings across 43 years. He diagnosed medical conditions for patients he'd never met, conditions he had no training to identify. Doctors used his readings for treatment, but his most controversial claims involved Atlantis. Hundreds of readings across 2 decades return to the same subject. According to Casey, an advanced civilization was destroyed around 10,000 BC. This was around the end of the last ice age. It's the same time frame as the Younger Dryas cataclysm. But there were survivors. They scattered to Egypt, the Yucatan, and the Bahamas. They brought technology, they brought knowledge. And to preserve that knowledge, they built archives. Casey described a hall of records beneath the Giza Plateau in dozens of separate readings between 1923 and 1944.
Since he's talking about not only a writing system, but he's also talking about specific subjects that require a writing system, then if you discuss Stone Age, that's prehistory, and prehistory specifically means the absence of writing. So basically, if this is stuff that they did create in what we call the Stone Age, whichever it is, it could be the Neolithic if you want to connect it to agriculture, or it could be the Mesolithic, then it would stop being prehistoric. We would have to change the nomenclature in the books, because if they have a fully formed writing system and maths, advanced astronomy, they are not prehistoric by definition. Not that I'm saying that it wouldn't be able to do it, but I'm saying if it's stone, it's not prehistoric anymore if they have a writing system. The one thing that I want to say, the transmedium guy, I don't believe a word of that. But one thing I want to say when it comes to, and I'm not trying to be overly skeptic, but when it comes to the aliens, right? Because it did show the little flying UFO and then, or UAP if you want, and then they teach, but then they're like, oh, we're about to be destroyed, or maybe they need to leave, who knows? They're like, hey, come back to Orion, mate. There is a civil war in their planet, and these aliens, I'm like, who cares about this? It was just about the resources. We're gonna leave, but they decide we want to preserve. Here is my question to that. Not trying to be contrarian, I just want to objectively see if someone can give me an answer that could make logical sense. If there was a advanced alien civilization that was so advanced that they are capable of intergalactic travel. They come here. They give us knowledge. Why do they build in stone? Why do they build in stone and wood? Why are they using copper? Shouldn't we find something akin to a titanium alloy? Because they could absolutely, there is no question that they are capable of building metals. In fact, if they are more advanced than us, which they would be by definition, since they're coming from another constellation, completely different place, then not only they should be able of making at least steel and titanium, we should find, in fact, alloys that we are not capable of making. I do not understand why an advanced alien civilization decides, but the rules of the game is that you're only allowed to build with materials that would in fact be available to a Stone Age civilization or a Bronze Age, or Chalcolithic, whatever the heck. Do not use anything. No, we should, personally, it doesn't make sense. You want to preserve? Build a vault of titanium. Why do you care if we find it 4,000 years after the fact? You're probably in your own planet by now, or you're still here controlling stuff, but why do you care? Why is that a problem? Unless Zaki Hawass is a reptilian, and then that's why he doesn't want us to know. I've always been confused by it, because I love the idea of the ancient astronaut theory of alien civilization that pushed us forward thousands of years in civilization. I just do not understand why they would build in wood and stone, though. That's the one thing that I don't understand. This was phenomenal. I loved it. I actually enjoyed it very much. I know I was a little skeptical here and there because that's how I am on certain things, but I'm not super skeptical. I'm not one of who is like, no, I don't want to hear it. So I'm not like that either, because that pisses me off too. So just kind of a balanced approach is what I always try to have. And hopefully I managed to do that with a degree of fairness, or at least that's what I try.